District Historical Society. I like your motto here, a window on the past to enrich the future. And you know what, that's kind of a very important thing. You have to know where you've been to have a better future. And on that note, when you're talking about the future, take a look at the title of our farm here. This is we are Double D Pastures. The double D is not a size of anything. It is strictly referring to our two sons, Domenico and Donato. And the reason why this title was chosen for the title of our farm is we always think into the future, and it's not just for our kids or their kids. We are thinking for everybody's children and grandchildren. The fact is, we're only in this world for a short time, and my wife and I feel very strongly you have to hand off a better world to the next generation. If we look up at the photograph here, you'll see a typical picture. This is Ontario, Simcoe County. I think the date is sometime in the 1800s. Very typical farm scene. And what you see going on there, the horse-powered, which was for thousands and thousands of years, was our main source of power for doing farm field work. This is just very typical what you see. It's a plow furrow being pulled by a horse. That takes us into what happened in the 1900s. We got into tractors, steam tractors, gas tractors, diesel tractors. As time went on, those tractors got a lot larger. The principle of what they did was essentially the same. Okay, and this mostly ties into cropping, but sometimes it's done when you want to, when folks back then wanted to renew, and still to this day when they want to renew a pasture, all right, they would typically plow it up. But the problem with plowing, furrowing, tilling of the land, okay, especially when it's done repeatedly, and it does not matter how you do it, the end result is going to be this, all right? You look up at the photograph here, this is a crop field here in Ontario. Exactly where, I don't know. I pulled it off the Ministry of Ag website, but it shows a very poor example, or typical poor example of an overcropped, overused field. What has happened here is what's called crusting, and you have no ground cover. We'll be talking a little bit more about that. The other example of what we see here with the farm is we have, if you look up this photograph, there's two things I want to bring to your attention. On the left side, you'll see that the previous owner of our farm, by the way, we do own our own farm now, you'll see sand put in place there to make a horse riding rink. Okay, and anytime you see sand, even when it's done deliberately, just know that basically what you're looking at is degraded soil. On the right side, you can't quite see it, but it's an overgrazed, over-trampled by horses, and overcropped and overhayed over the years. It's land that has become very unproductive. Okay, it's been a little bit overused, too much. Some of the major drawbacks to what happens when land is basically misused and abused like this, you see a major loss in soil organic matter. Everybody hears that big buzzword today of carbon in the atmosphere. All right, carbon is an element. It's essential to life on Earth. All right, it has to cycle. The problem is we have a lot of it in the atmosphere. We don't have near enough of it in the soil where it belongs. Okay, there's many reasons for this. We'll cover this during the presentation. Take a look at this scene here. I chose, this is a herding elk grazing, this is out in Alberta, and I chose an elk herd as a particular reason. Here in Simcoe County, Grey County, and Bruce County, about 200-300 years ago, there was elk herds all across this land. All right, when the European settlers came here, they basically wiped them out. All right, and the one thing to note is that the specific subspecies of elk that would have existed back then are basically gone forever. All right, there is repopulation, reintroduction efforts being done by the M&R in northern Ontario, near Burwash and places like that, to reintroduce elk populations. But that is going to be, they're taking the some of the herds were in Alberta and British Columbia and transplanting them to Ontario. So in that sense, all right, just from mismanagement of our natural resources, we've wiped out a subspecies of a creature we'll never have back. All right. This here is not a native Ontario species, but is native to many parts of Canada. This is a bison. Everybody take a look up there. It's on the grasslands. One of the big things you'll see going on here is bison herding together. Okay, and I love to use pictures of bison because they are one of the best examples of a herding animal. Many people see this image and they feel that, oh, this is overgrazing. This is what's going to destroy the land. Well, we're going to get more into why it's not, when it's done correctly. Nature has its own built-in safeguards. Okay, these animals up here are one of the key groups of animals that live naturally around the world on every continent except the Antarctic and Australia, but they have been introduced to Australia. Now keep in mind, in Australia, they do have natural grazing species, but they are not ruminants. The ruminant is the four-chambered stomach animal, right, that digests high-fiber plant material in that first stomach chamber. Right, they ferment it there, and then they digest it through three other stomachs. Ruminants, many ruminants are herding animals. Some ruminants are a small group or solo animals, but what their effect on nature is very important. We're going to discuss more of that in a few minutes. All right, what we are is Double D Pastures, holistically managed regenerative farm. We say holistically managed. My wife and I are completed the Holistic Management International's farm management course. We've done it twice. We voluntarily did it a second time because there's so much to it. Holistic management basically means to manage everything for your farm. We do not look at our farm and say, we're going to manage for the cows or the sheep. We look at our farm and we say, we're managing an ecosystem, and we're going to make the parts move within that ecosystem so that it best mimics nature. The holistic management course goes further beyond that even. They go into financial management. They go into being socially responsible. All right. The big thing they have is developing your holistic context, and in that, you're looking at where you want to be at in 1 year, 5 years, 100 years, and even 1,000 years. All right. Obviously, Lisa and I aren't going to be here in 1,000 years, but we want to set the groundwork and the footprint in place so that future generations build on what we have and make it even better. The regenerative, the term regenerative farm, where that comes in from. We don't like the term sustainable, right? We don't want to keep an injury going, so to speak. If you have a sick and ill person, you don't want to sustain that. You want to heal that person up. You want to make them better. This comes to the term of regenerative. Regenerative farming is about healing the land. It is about making the land better. It's about improving soil quality and creating or getting food, fiber, materials as you need, but in the same time building up the land. It's not a matter of let this land get better or farm it, log it, etc. You do both. Take a look at this picture up here. And I picked this one very specifically. The big driver up in the corner is the solar energy. Solar energy is basically what drives almost all life, or pretty much all life on Earth. All right, without it, there is no life. The other things you don't see in this picture, but they are there, there's soil, which is the next key component to what we're doing, plants and animals, and there is moisture. Those are the things you need to create life on land. And you need to manage them well to create healthy life on land. This is the farm that we presently own between Singhampton and Feversham. And that image that you're looking at up there, that is a worn out crop field from March 2000, or the end of March 2016. That is when we took possession of the farm. All right. there was literally, I don't know if you can see in the pictures, there's rocks peeking up everywhere. That is canola stubble. There's dirt. If Lisa and I had decided to go fishing, we would have been in bad luck because you had to go far and wide to find a worm. My wife Lisa is just going to bring something to your attention there. If you look up in the corner, not that cute little boy, that's our son. But there's two trees. There's two trees up in the far right corner. Right? We'll refer to those as our reference trees. Right? You can vaguely make out a fence line. Now the problems with the soil that you see it as it is, there's no ground cover. Right? There's nothing growing there right now except for the odd weed. It's just dead matter, bare ground. Bare ground allows carbon and water to evaporate rapidly into the atmosphere. This doesn't do any good for us or the ecosystem, and it doesn't do any good for the plants. This is our this is what we did with it with holistic management in a span of 14 months. All right. This is same field. Lisa, can you show them the reference trees?
I can't get it to show.
Oh, okay. The reference trees are 3/4 of the way up in the left corner. It's a slightly different angle, but it's the same field you're looking at. As you can see, it is a night and day difference. What we have here is a natural grassland or a meadow environment, as it should be. Thick, tall, bushy grass. It draws in the carbon, it draws in the solar energy, okay, and it blocks out the sun from touching the soil, which is a big thing. We don't want to dry out our soil. And it creates, besides the cattle, the sheep, the goats, the pigs, and chickens, those are the animals we've raised to date on our farm. This is also a home to worms, many different species of insects, including dung beetles, many different flies, all right, frogs, snakes. All right, you have an entire ecosystem out there living in our grasslands.
Also, one point to note, there was not a single seed planted in that area.
This is all, the fact you're looking at here that Lisa's talking about. What we used that first year, because we were really short on plants to feed the animals other than some weeds.
You gotta stay on the mic.
Okay. Well, what we fed the animals that year, that first year there, is we went through a lot of hay. But hay, we saw it not as expensive feed for the animals. We saw it as natural fertilizer and free seed. Technically we did seed, okay? Well, the hay did. Okay, and we let the cows push it into the soil. Now you look up here. This is our main effect. And this is how grasslands have been put into existence and kept into existence for 30 some odd million years. That's about the time it was when the first grasses appeared on Earth. And coincidentally, around the same time is when the first ruminants evolved. These are our cows up here. Now, like those bison, you'll see that the girls, this is mostly girls now, there's a few boys. They're bunched up together. If you look behind you, you see a bare field, or an empty field. I almost say a bare field because there's plants in this field. And that's because we have a predator out there to keep those cows to behave in their natural herding behavior. You'll see two white lines at the bottom right side. The electric fence, it's a portable electric fence. The whole thing can be carried by 2 people. All right, and it's strong enough that it'll put out about anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 volts. It can make a rhinoceros dance on its toes. What we do with this, that fence, our cows are very well trained to it. We could turn it off for several hours and they still won't touch it. All right. This allows us to take out, because in nature, what you have to control your herds, whether it's zebras and wildebeest in Africa or bison on the Canadian prairies, you have predator animals, pack hunting predator animals, such as wolves, lions, coyotes. Those are the things that force a lot of herd behavior. Herding animals have to stick together, safety in numbers, they eat together, and because they soil the ground that they're on, they're forced to move. All right, biologists made this observation many years ago, and it actually took a very well-renowned the founder of the Savory Institute and a biologist from Africa, Alan Savory, to apply those principles many years ago to farmers to get better results for both the land and the animals. We also do the same thing. You look up here. This is our goat and sheep flock. Oh. That's our goat and sheep flock there. And with, yeah. And we do the same principles with the goats and sheep. We have a slightly different fencing system for them. Sheep and goats are pretty small and they can duck under small wires of fence. We have a mesh system. But they are also a ruminant animal, and so we use them in the same way. They have a slightly different plant preference than what the cows do. I can talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. This is one of the biggest things that's a driver in the recycling of materials in nature. Animal manure, especially ruminant animal manure. You can imagine, if you will, in the natural grasslands before the European settlers butchered the bison population down, you have 5,000 bison scattered across a 4 or 5 acre stretch of land. They eat a little bit of grass, they eat some sedges, they eat some legumes, they eat some shrubs and weeds, and then they have to, if anybody has been around cattle before, or bison, because they're 99% the same animal, they have to go to the bathroom, so they're going to drop off nature's fertilizer, and this is what's going to force them to move on, right? Nobody wants to be dining out of their own bathroom. So they move on, but they stay together in tight numbers. Besides the manure, they also urinate on the ground, which is a high source of nitrogen. For those that have been involved with any sort of gardening or plant managing before, nitrogen is a bit of a boost for plants. And they also do a little bit of massaging, right? The ruminant or herding animals will push their hooves into the ground. This is good for taking plant matter that hasn't been grazed, pushing some of that into the soil, where the soil microbes, worms, bugs, insects, other things living in the soil will break that down and return that carbon to the soil. All right? I've got a shot here. I wanted to steal this one off the internet. This just shows how dung beetles, one of the key animals in our ecosystem around the world, and how they function, how they break down dung and help cycle some of the nutrients back into the soil. We do have about 5 species of dung beetles here in Canada. There's 2 of them that I know that live in Ontario. One of them we see frequently all the time on our farm. And one of the most interesting things too is that it's not just dung beetles. There's a very specific type of fly that lives out of cattle manure. We'll also see, if we let that manure, which we do, we let it sit on the ground, if you come back about a week or 2 later, it'll be loaded with earthworms. All right, nature is not letting it sit still. Nature does not sit still. It's constantly recycling material. All right, if you look, okay, if we're able to get that image back up, I wanted to show you one of the strategies we use to better enhance our soil. That was from the first year we're there. That is a bunch of our calves from 2016. And you'll see them out there sitting on a pile of hay out in the field. You can't tell from the picture, but that's a very weedy field. It's the same field that you first see in the beginning images. All right, what we had done, every time we moved the animals in, we let them graze the plant matter they could that they find there, that they're willing to eat, and then we topped them up with hay. Besides getting nutrients from themselves, not optimal because hay in the middle of summertime is really kind of counterproductive, but it keeps the animals alive and healthy. But it also allowed, like I said earlier, to put seed on the ground from the plants. We don't farm those. Okay, so there's our calves having a nice little nap on top of the hay that's been put down for the that afternoon. Their hoof action, they're laying on it, they're urinating and defecating on it will help push that carbon-rich material. Hay is very much predominantly carbon. All right, it's another trick we use to build up our soil.
That was what, just a few months after the crop stalks.
Yeah,
Canola stalks.
you saw all those canola stalks that were in the field. We didn't waste our time trying to knock them all down. We have 1,000-pound animals that can do it better than we could, so we let them do it. This is what our farm typically looks like today. All right, those cows are standing; they're not laying down. All right, that there is about mid-June or so. Very, very typical for spring cool season grasses. They start to reach up high for the sun. Big thing though, for anybody who's got any experience with pasturing or haying, those plants are covered with hay leaves right now, or pardon, not hay leaves, grass leaves that are solar collectors, drawing in energy. Some of that energy will get converted into carbohydrates within the plant, to which the cow will draw nutrients from. The rest of it gets put into the soil in the form of something called glomalin. All right, it's a liquid carbon substance that the plant will store as excess energy directly into the soil. Two things can happen with glomalin. One is the plant can draw on it later, as well as the little critters can actually live off of the glomalin that's in the soil. The other thing that can happen too is that it can feed mycorrhizal fungi. I think that's later on in the presentation. I just want to show this image here. If you look on the left, we have a patch for a pasture with very tall reed canary grass, tall fescue, as well as red clover and vetch. All right, that grass there, the electric fence posts you see are 3 feet high. That grass there is well up over my head. In the span of a couple of hours, if you look at the photo on the right, that's the same field. The cows do their trick. They get their nutrients. The rest, they punch down onto the ground. All right, this stimulates grass to grow back. When grass is grazed, all right, it has a different effect than any type of mowing will ever have. This is one of our cows here, Josephine. Josephine, it's a bit of a show cow for the camera. Well, this is one of the other farms we managed, and the story with this one is they moved on after this overgrazed land had been rested for 4 years. Okay, it had cattle on it for many, many years, and it was rested for 4 years. So the grass there was thick and rich. So when our cows moved in for the 2 months they were staying here back in 2013, they got a real boost in nutrition. Some people here may be familiar with the Silver Creek area, formerly owned by the Skelton family. All right, that's where this took place. And the thing about what you may or may not realize looking at this picture, there's a wide diversity. There's probably about 10 different grass species growing there, several different types of forbs, weeds, and a couple different types of legumes, as well as some water plants. This diversity in nature, each type of plant has a different root system and a root structure to it. All right, that enriches the soil, and it also provides nutrients for the cattle or any grazing animal above, cattle, sheep, deer, goats. The other nice thing too is that plants grow at different heights, and they grow at different times of the year. This allows for that solar and carbon capture out of the atmosphere to go on basically from the beginning of April all the way through until we find on our farm the grass doesn't brown out until about mid-November or so. This is one of the other farms that we had managed. I won't divulge the location because the owners there are very private about their lives. And if you see that little bit of white spot there, this is after 2 seasons of holistic managed grazing. And what I've got there is a little bit of a speck of what's called the mycorrhizal fungi. Mycorrhizal fungi comes in both an endo and an ecto form. And this is the internet of plants. It literally is a giant fungi plant that lives underneath the surface. It can be anywhere from 2 feet down to 20 feet under the ground. It can cover an area of about 10 square meters, right on up to 20 acres for one single organism. It connects
thousands and thousands of plants together. It feeds entirely off of other plants, but in a symbiotic relationship. Mycorrhizal fungi will grab minerals, nutrients, and water from some plants, and if it feels other plants are in stress, it'll transfer those nutrients through its network to those plants. That's one of the biggest things why mycorrhizal fungi is a huge component to healthy soils. You can actually buy in many farm plant stores, you can buy mycorrhizal inoculant for different plants in your garden. One of the biggest things though about mycorrhizal fungi, it is a fungus, it's a subterranean fungus. It cannot be exposed to sunlight or air, right? That'll kill it. If you look at the plant clump on your left, that's not from our sources. I wanted a really good picture from the internet, beside that one little tiny speck I showed you on ours. This is one taken from the internet, and it shows on the left there all that white hair and fuzz. That is mycorrhizal fungi roots reaching up to the plant roots to create that symbiotic relation. The other thing about this too that you have to realize is for plants and the fungi roots, they grow and they shrink back. They grow and they shrink back. And this is done in times of stress. The root is like a reserve or a basement for plants. It's where they can store nutrients and water and stuff that they need in hard times. As they draw upon these things when they get grazed, mowed, even if they have a fire or something like that, they draw the nutrients out and the minerals out from their roots and they grow back again. They leave behind several tiny little tunnels in the soil, perfect for water to permeate through, and as well as worms to work through, although worms can pretty much drill through a lot of some pretty hard soil. It also allows space for follow-on plants to move their roots into those tiny spaces throughout the soil. Good healthy soil should be very porous, right? Lots of holes, almost like a sponge. On our farm, we try to mimic nature as much as we can. This is one of our best bull calves we ever produced. That's Baxter. He is about 10 minutes old there. He is the son of a very famous bull, Big Red. And that's our show cow up there again. That's Josephine. All right, she somehow gravitates towards the camera. And she calved without any assistance from us. She cleaned up her calf, got him on his feet, and got him milking. Many farms in the industrial sector in Canada tend to rely on people that's having to be there to pull the calf from the cow. In almost every country in the world, they look at Canada, we're actually the worst country in the world for doing this, and the United States is the second, as being a bit of an abnormal, because we think it's normal to have someone there to pull the calf out. All right? We selected a breed of cow, purebred registered Dexters. We selected Dexters because they did not ever get picked up by the industrial meat side. And what that allowed for is the Dexter holds on to many of its almost wild characteristics, such as calving on grass and not needing assistance from people. That's Baxter there. You can he's only about 18 months in that picture, so you can see he got sold to a Dexter farm in Prince Edward Island. As you can see, he's going on to have a pretty good life. Talking more about how we raise our animals naturally. This here, we just got our, this is another one of our cows, Petra, and her calf, Cinnamon. They're grazing out on grass. This is late summer grass. This is actually 6 weeks after the grass has been mowed for hay. We're not the biggest fans of producing hay, but given the realities of our current situation with Canada, you know, especially here in Simcoe County and on Grey County, we live in the very east end of Grey County. All right, we deal with a lot of snow, so hay is a necessity. All right, but we try to minimize hay feeding to only when we absolutely have to do it. But as you see here, mama cow looking after her baby out on the grass. This is the type of thing we are aiming for. When you look at nature, nature is never just one type of animal. This is our chicken flock. At this point, what they are doing, they're egg layers by the way, They're following in different spots that the sheep had been and the goats had been in, and they are cleaning up after them. Like, cleaning up's a rough word. They're helping to spread the manure around naturally. They look for maggot larvae living in the manure. And they'll also pick up some other insects. A lot of people don't understand that insects have a sharp beak. They're an omnivorous animal. They will eat insects, they'll eat worms, they'll eat bugs, okay, as well as,
Frogs.
yeah, they'll eat, we've had them capture frogs and chase snakes around. All right, they will eat plant matter as well. I've seen them eat grass seed, and I've seen them eat clover seed and alfalfa seed. All right, so this is where we feel that when possible, chickens belong, is out in the sunlight, not cooped up in a log house. Wintertime, it's understandable because the chicken originated from the jungle guinea fowl from like 8,000 years ago, so it's not a true winter animal like, say, geese are or duck are. But here you can see our animals, or chickens out on pasture. This is the diversity that I was talking about. In this one little 1 foot by 1 foot area here, if you know your plants very well, you'll see some red clover in there. The yellow is the bird's foot trefoil. The big sort of bulky plant you see in the middle is your standard alfalfa, blue flowered. There's also ryegrass, orchard grass, and some timothy in there in that picture as well. And I think if you'd have to look very hard, but you'll see some vetch and some dandelion. This is part of what we like to see on our pastures and our hay fields. A wide diversity of plant life. And it's not for any social political reason. It's for the benefit of the land, and it's for the benefit of the animal. All right? I don't think anybody here goes home every night and eats steak and potatoes every single night. So we feel our cattle and our sheep shouldn't eat timothy and alfalfa every day, all day long. So we like that wide variety of plant life for them to eat. Talking about following nature as best you can. This is from the end of this last November. That's a young bull we have out there, and those are some heifers. As much as possible, we'll try to push our cattle to stay on pasture. This time of the year, the snow comes in. That November snow is a little wet and heavy. So what we did to start our days off when these guys were out in the field, we throw them some hay, give them a little boost and something to start off with, and as they walked around, they kind of cleared off a bit of the snow, and then they'll use their snouts once they realize there's green grass under there. There's a lot of green grass underneath that, by the way. They use, and they clear it away, and they start grazing on the snow that's underneath. The main reason right now why we pull them off pasture for the winter time, it's not that the cow needs to come off pasture, it's for us. My wife and I we can't trudge through 3 feet of snow and bring the cows their hay. We are working towards a point in the future where we want to keep the animals pastured year-round and shelter them up in wooded areas. All right, like not that they would go into the same wooded area every night. And as much as possible, we like to do something called stockpiled grass. That is grass and legumes grown deliberately, left intact, and then you send the cows out there to eat it. And then as a backup to that, if it's snow and ice and they just can't dig through it, then you've got hay as a backup option to make sure that they get the nutrients. And if you feed it to them on pasture, we save ourselves the problem of having to mechanically harvest or drag out compost and manure and spread it at another time. The nutrients are already laid out there. This is another one of our animals. That is Athena. She was our first ever calf born on the farm, and she defied the odds. She came into the world at 25 pounds. All right, she wasn't much bigger than a house cat. And your typical Dexter calf should be between about 40 to 60 pounds. All right, we made sure, with a little help, that this is one we did intervene on because we were pretty sure she was premature. We intervened a little bit, but we let her mother do most of the work, and she ended up adopting a surrogate mother. That's Lisa and Athena. Athena is about 7 months there. This is Athena at about 20 months of age. She was a real sweetheart of a girl. That's Lisa cuddling up with her in March 2016. And just so you know, my mother, Mary Lou, was actually bottle fed that very cow. And that's Athena in the cycle of life, or circle of life. There's Athena having her first little bull calf. And that was in June of 2016. And it's kind of amazing. Athena is really, even for a Dexter, she is a small cow, and yet she had an enormous tank of a bull. But as you can see, the tradition and sort of the effect we're looking for. Have the calf born on pasture. Sometimes though, we do have to bring our animals in off of pasture. This here is the most recent bull we've been using. That is Blue Moon. Now Blue Moon is not from our farm. He's unfamiliar with our system of management for grazing, and he's not as well known to us. So we move the breeding cows in to the pen every September through to early November to have their time with Blue Moon, the bull that we bring in. Eventually we're going to select our own bull from outside the herd, get him trained to our system. That's the biggest thing there. Our cows know our system of movement cold. If I go out there, I start setting up the electric fence. Well, right now they're in a winter yard. They'll start bawling at me because they know that it means they're going back out on grass. Once they're out on pasture, they see us setting up the next fence. They could be asleep. One of them sees us, they'll wake everyone else up, and they'll go line up exactly where they need to move. And even if they're in the middle of grazing, if I need to move them early, we have one call we always use. As soon as the cows hear it, they come to it. In all the time at our farm that we're at right now, we've only once had an entire herd breakout. And using that call that we use every single day, our herd, and accidentally one of the cows got caught up in an old electric line we didn't know was there, and she hit the live electric line. She knocked the fence down when she panicked, and the whole herd took off, disappeared across a field. Lisa and I used that call, and within about 2 minutes, they were thundering right on back, and then we rewarded them with a treat. Same way you might train a dog. This is our backfield. It's 15 acres. This year we only got 94 large round bales off it. We're hoping with good holistic management to get at least another 30 or 40 bales. All right. I talked about we don't like mowing hay, but it is a necessity. Part of the reason with mowing hay is you're taking the nutrients by taking the plants off the ground. When a cow, sheep, or goat eats that grass, and when it's growing out there, they return nutrients to the soil as they're eating. So it's kind of a deposit withdrawal at the same time. With hay, you're just withdrawing from the bank account, and sooner or later, you've got to return something. So from our system of creating an ecosystem and drawing food from it, right, that's one of the things we aim to do. This here is our own pastured eggs. And it's hard to tell from the picture here, but they're a little larger than they normally are. For the time being, we're temporarily out of the egg business until this spring, and we're going to get a fresh flock of chickens and get up and running again.
You need to elaborate on that.
Oh, the reason why we are temporarily out of the chicken business, unfortunately, when you have your animals out in nature, nature can be beautiful, but it can be a little cruel too. And we had a fisher on the farm attack and sabotage the entire flock in one night. We lost over 30 chickens. All right, so we're taking steps to improve that though. All right, we have we're getting the dog. We got a second dog, and we're going to be doing a little bit more aggressive patrolling, as well as getting the chickens back under electric fencing next year. The last 2 years, they haven't been under electric fencing. We've let them free range a bit, and it has cost us. So, but that is one of the downsides of nature. Now, before anybody asks, you'll notice how you see every picture of our cattle, you'll notice the horns are on. The horns are left on for a reason. I can describe a picture for you that I witnessed this last August. Young calf sitting up by the fence, and a coyote in broad daylight decided to come up and check it out. It only took one steer to make a little bit of a move. Once the mama saw it, which only took about a split second, you can imagine what it's like when 15 large cattle with horns come thundering across a paddock charging at you and each one's weighing over 900 pounds, the coyote was quick to turn, tuck tail, and get out of there. We found on our farm, our cattle have zero fear of coyotes. All right, when the coyotes, when we first got there, the coyotes would come and hassle them outside the fence, and the cattle had no problem just lining up by the fence, pawing the ground and shaking their horns. We have found that leaving horns on the cattle, it has its risk for us, the people that handle them. You just have to take an extra precaution in handling them. But you'll find your cattle are far more confident in how they handle themselves. Going back to the food side of things, this is part of some of the other stuff we're getting here. Grass-fed, grass-finished beef from our own cattle. That was from the last steer we harvested in August. He's a great big old boy. So, big thing that we aim to do is create an ecosystem, and then a functioning ecosystem, and then draw food, fiber, wood, and materials that we need from it. It must be done in a regenerative fashion. You can't strip and leave the land deprived. We don't crop, but this is becoming very popular in Canada, or Western Canada, some parts of Ontario, and almost all the United States. What you're looking at up there is what they call a mixed cover crop. All right, a cover crop is a crop planted in advance of the main crop you intend to harvest. So you see up there is a field with oats, barley, rye, radish. All right, I believe there's some peas in there as well. It's a diverse mixture of different plants because each plant has a different function that it does and performs with the soil and a different root system. And what some of the more intelligent crop farmers are doing now, all right, they will plant this in advance of a crop, and they'll either terminate it, many different ways to terminate it. Gabe Brown, who's in North Dakota, his method of terminating it is to put cattle or sheep in there and have them graze it off. And then he'll follow in behind and no-till plant his intended crop. Okay, he doesn't clean up the residue or anything. I talked about earlier, not plowing the fields, not overgrazing. All right, by doing it in this manner, you're not plowing. When you no-till, you literally have like a disc or a drill that puts a small slice or a scratch in the ground and then deposits the seed off of a wheel into the ground. This keeps the carbon and the moisture in the soil where it belongs. It allows a much better production of the crops and the plants themselves. It also eliminates the need for using chemical fertilizer. Some farmers that do this still use GMO crops and things like Roundup. My wife Lisa and I don't agree with that concept, but we're a little ways off from convincing farmers to ditch that. This is some of our own cover cropping we did here. And you saw in the earlier pictures we had that horse rink, which was just nothing but a sandy pit. I planted a diversity of different plants, and I chose a lot of annuals. This here is Russian mammoth sunflowers. If you look at the one on the left, you'll actually see a bumblebee doing its thing as a pollinator. And the reason why I got this shot here is we're just showing you how we use plants to help build that pure sand pit up into something that's functioning. I didn't get a chance to take a picture of that area last summer, but it is doing much better than the prior summer, but it's still got a ways to go. This is another example of a cover crop, but it's predominantly, this one here is predominantly a wheat, triticale, barley field, and that one's intended for making hay or silage with. All right, and this is one of the typical scenes of from our farm. You'll see our cattle out there, relaxing, chewing cud, just generally enjoying life and functioning as nature intended this herding ruminant to function. All right, recycling nutrients into the ground, all right, turning some of those nutrients into things like meat, milk. We don't do milk, but if other farmers that are in the dairy industry can choose to milk their animals. Fiber, all right, we shear sheep every year. That basically kind of concludes how we run our farm. Biggest target we're looking at is regenerating, building up the soils. Without the soil, you really don't have anything to build from. Looking back into the past, we learn from the mistakes of the past, and we don't want to repeat them.
Rick?
Yep.
One thing you didn't show, we didn't have any pictures of, is reducing the deadfall in the dying forests.
Oh, yes.
And running the pigs through there.
Yeah. Another thing we've done as well, we didn't touch on it much here because we're just starting on it, is much smarter agroforestry. The farm we inherited right now, 95, or I should say inherited, we purchased, but the way the state of the land was as we got it, about 50 acres of that is in open fields, and then the other 40-ish acres are in different types of woodlands. A lot of people think, oh, let's be environmental, and they plant a whole bunch of trees in. And you can tell with some of our worst forests that they're man-made forests because they're perfectly in rows. The trees were planted about 2 feet apart. I'm guessing of back in the late 70s, early 80s. The problem is, these little tiny trees grow up into 30, 40-foot trees. I now have, or at least I now have a forest of predominantly dead trees in one spot. Trees have to be managed properly. So in that way, you know, wood's a material we still need. So there's a perfect example. If that forest had been thinned out as we went along, it would have kept the stronger trees healthier and good to go and allowed them to do their job to sequester carbon like grass does. It also provides a shade spot for the cattle, sheep, and goats to go to as well. We didn't have any pictures because my camera, unfortunately, was overloaded and I couldn't grab any pictures for the time we had pigs. But last summer and this past fall, this winter is the first time we've done pigs. We used our pigs as a natural cleanup crew. We had certain spots in the wooded areas, just on the edge of the pasture, where we had a lot of weeds, shrubs, and some nasty overgrowth. We could have cleared it mechanically, but it would have taken us literally days upon days upon days to get the work done. So what we did instead is we had our 6 little piglets. When we started them on this endeavor, they were approximately, I'd say, about 40 pounds each. Not very big, and they were still kind of cute. And pigs are very intelligent, so we were able to use them to move them from one spot to another, switch them out every 2 or 3 days. And trust me, they are a good, solid landscaping crew. If you ever got plants you don't want, keep a couple of pigs handy. They will destroy, the longer you keep them in there, the more they'll destroy everything. We have a ground cover plant. I can't remember for me we don't know what it is, but it's a very obnoxious plant. It grows on the edge of one of our forests. Pigs took care of that problem. And in exchange, what we got is more bacon, more sausage out of the deal. So it works out. To take advantage of that, as the pigs moved on, I planted behind them. I put in fall rye, oats, and some clover. This allowed, because nature, one rule about nature for anybody who doesn't understand, nature is not very tolerant of bare spots in the soil. If you don't plant something there, nature will. And if it could be a dandelion, could be grass, could be a burdock, all right? So in this case, we decided to put in our own cover crop, all right, to suppress the bare ground behind the pigs. Now, like I said, it's predominantly fall rye, some oats, and some clover. Did I cover all the points of the pigs?
Yeah.
At this point, is there any questions on holistic management and regenerative agriculture? The two very much go hand in hand.